I am John Elliott Churchville, and welcome to Video Wednesday. Today, my topic is Understand Your Alpha and Omega. In my discussion of this topic today, I'm going to cover the following points. The Omega already exists as potential in the Alpha. The Alpha Omega is a general principle, and the perfection of the Alpha must grow in the Omega. So what is the Alpha and Omega? The Alpha and Omega is the entire series of causation from the first originating movement to the final completed result. What this means to you is that whether you consider it on the universal scale of creating a universe or on your own individual scale of building a house, everything has its origin in an idea, a thought, and it has its completion in the manifestation of that thought into form. Many intermediate stages are necessary, but the alpha and omega of the series are the thought and the thing. This is evidence that, in essence, the thing already existed in the thought. Omega is already potential in alpha. In other words, wherever there is an alpha, the omega must necessarily already be in it because the end always has its locus in the beginning. So, what does this mean to you? Well, it means that where you start today matters. Each new day is a fresh starting point, a new alpha. The omega that was in your alpha of yesterday will not be present in today's alpha if you have changed your alpha path since yesterday. Now, the ramifications of this truth for you are absolutely enormous. If you've been on the wrong path for years, you can get on the right path today and avoid the omega to which your past thought and behavior were inexorably taking you. On the other hand, if you leave the right path and choose the wrong path today, the omega of good that had been building up over time will be replaced by the omega of bad, inherent within the alpha you chose today. The alpha and omega in your life function according to how you adhere to the law of cause and effect. It's as basic as what you plant, you will harvest. And as a man thinks, so is he. You will only receive the fruit that grows from the seeds you planted. So if you planted onion seeds, don't expect to harvest strawberries. You must lay hold of the general principle that the thing already exists in the thought. The meaning of a general principle, as you know, is that it can be applied in many different situations and circumstances. It is not relegated to one kind or type of issue. Rather, it is extremely broad. So try to apply this general principle to yourself and your own potential as I provide my interpretation of the apocalyptic vision that the Apostle John wrote in the book of Revelation. In John's vision, the one who spoke, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end, at Revelation 22:13, is described as like a son of man. That is, however transcendent the appearance in the vision, it is essentially human and suggests the presence of the universal principle at the human level. But the figure in the apocalyptic vision is not of a human being as you and I would ordinarily know and recognize him. The figure is that of Omega as it exists in Alpha. It is the ideal of a human being in its future evolved state as it currently exists in the mind of the all originating Spirit of God, which was manifested in objective form to the Apostle John's eyes. It was presented as the Alpha and Omega of that ideal in all the majesty of the divine glory. But if you can grasp the truth that the thing is already existent in the thought, then you can see further still that this transcendent Omega must already be existent in the divine ideal of who you are. If on the plane of the absolute, there is no space-time continuum, but only an everlasting now, does it not follow that this glorified person is a present fact in the mind of the all originating Spirit of God? And if it is true that the thing exists in the thought, it must equally be true that the thought finds form in the thing. Since all things formed exist under conditions of space and time, they are necessarily by law subject to the law of growth. While the essence of the thing in the thought is perfect from the beginning, the expression of the thing requires a period of growth. You must never lose sight of the perfection of the thing in the thought just because you do not yet see the perfection of the thought in the thing. Therefore, you must remember that you are not yet who you will become. You are only in the making, but you are now in a position to facilitate the evolutionary process that is going on within you by consciously cooperating with the creative spirit. Your share in the work begins with your recognition of the divine ideal that is in you and finding the pattern by which you are to be guided. Since you are the person to be created by this pattern, you must believe that the divine ideal will use whatever process is necessary to grow you into your best ideal self. This creative process will take place in your own mind. It is true, and in fact, if it is true, that the thing must take form in the thought before the thought can take form in the thing, then the divine ideal of who you are can only be externalized or manifested in your objective life in proportion as it is first formed in your own thought. It takes form in your thought only to the extent that you are aware of its existence in the divine mind. As the mirror of your own mind blurs or clearly reflects the image of the divine ideal, so will it produce weak or strong reproductions of it in your external life. You should never limit your conception of the divine ideal of yourself, nor should you, in false humility, take the view that you are somehow unfit or unworthy to live up to such an exalted ideal as that of yourself in the divine mind. When you take this low view of yourself, you expose your ignorance of the creative law. Never shut your eyes to the fact that the omega of completion already exists in the alpha of conception, and that the alpha of conception would be nothing but a lying illusion if it were not capable of expression in the omega of completion. The creative process in you is that you become the individual reflection of what you realize God to be in relation to you. If you realize the all originating spirit of God as the infinite potential of all that can make a perfected human being, then your conception must build up a mirror image in your mind. In turn, the mental image held in your mind will act upon your external conditions. This is the process, and it demonstrates what the Apostle Paul meant when he wrote of Christ being formed in you at Galatians 4:19, and that you're being renewed in knowledge after the image of him who created you at Colossians 3:10. Thus, it is a logical sequence of cause and effect. That is why you need to see more clearly the law of this sequence and use it intelligently. This is absolutely new knowledge. That is, your recognition of principles which you had not previously known or understood is new knowledge. The fact that you had not known this knowledge in the past is a new starting point for the creative spirit to work within you. Remember that the creative process is a work of natural growth that never ends. You will always be growing, knowing, and showing more as you ever more perfectly reflect the image of the divine ideal of who you are in the universal mind of God. The more you experience this process, the more you will see yourself entering a new order of life in which you become less and less subject to the old limitations that kept you enslaved. The omega you end with from this process is not a reward. It is simply the alpha you began with on the right path, fully completed. When you're ready to change, contact me. I am John Elliott Churchfield.